Shalom. Welcome to the Messianic Hour with Rabbi Scotts. The Messianic Hour is a program designed to give you insight into the Jewish roots of your faith. Rabbi Scott is also here to answer your questions and help you gain a deeper understanding of Bible prophecy. And now, here's your host, Rabbi Scotts.
Shalom and welcome to another edition of the Messianic Hour. I'm your host, Rabbi Scott. I'm here with my wife, Judy, and this show is dedicated to reaching the lost and educating the found as we bring from both a Jewish and Gentile perspective the understanding of the Word of God through our Messiah, Yeshua. And we are glad you are listening and / watching us today. If you're checking us out on YouTube or Vimeo or right there on our website, you're going to get all those great resources to hear and see us. And we have a great show in store for you. We're going to be continuing the topic of God redeeming the children of Israel based out of the story of Exodus. And on the second half of the show, we're going to have a special guest. She is a friend of ours for many years, Terri Gillipsie, and she has written a new book, and we're going to be talking to her about this book. It's a fiction book, right, based on
the story of Ruth
and Naomi, and it's based in a beauty salon.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yes, it is.
So we're going to take a interest in that and check that out. Judy, we had a couple more people sign up for our trip to Israel, so we're very excited. If you want to join us in Israel, June 9th through the 19th, we have a great opportunity for you to join us and be a part of it. You can see the land, experience it. The great thing is if you still get in there, we still have a couple seats left at 2013 prices, so there'll be no price increase from this last year. $39.99 gets you round trip from Atlanta. If you're outside of Atlanta, we can get you to either here or New York, and you can join us on this once-in-a-lifetime trip. It is a great trip. Everything's included. The only thing you have to pay for is your lunch every day and your spending money, and then the tip for the driver and the guide. All other taxes, everything else is already covered. We don't nickel and dime you to death, and we want you to come have a great time. It'll be a great trip. Come visit us and be with us in the land of Israel. Go to mail@rabbiscott.com for more information, or check out the website as well. And what else is going on, Judy?
Well, you need to go in and put it on your calendar that Hanukkah is early. We finished
real early.
Yes, we finished the fall feast, and Hanukkah is coming up starting in November.
Actually, it's right on time. It never
it's always
changes.
on time. Yes. On the biblical Hebrew calendar, it's always on time, but on our Gregorian calendar, It's early.
So we can have this year. We got to have potatoes, latkes, and turkey.
Right. Well, we do fried turkey at the congregation.
That's
anyway,
right.
So they'll just get a little overabundance of turkey that week.
That's right. You might have to give out your fried turkey recipe.
I don't have a fried turkey recipe.
It's really good, though.
We fly by the seat of our pants around here when it comes to food. We just kind of dump and pour. We call it DMP, by the way. But November 30th, the congregation will be celebrating Hanukkah. So if you're in the Atlanta area, we'd love for you to come with us. If not, and you're a virtual, you can watch online, because we are now actually starting to stream our Hanukkah parties.
We stream and if you want, you can join us and put your Hanukkah menorah. You can decorate one and send us the picture and be in the contest. We'll be back right after the break.
Welcome to the Messianic Hour. I'm Judy Seculo, and I'm glad that you're listening or watching us. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Just search for the Messianic Hour and ask to join the group. We post things in there too, and we give you quick links to the YouTube videos also. So another way to interact with us and ask questions and get to know us versus the Roku and Vimeo and GodTube and all those other things we are on too. But anyway, we are still in Exodus 6 through 9.
I think it was the last week.
I
think so.
I kind of hope so. I don't. It's not that I'm bored, but I'm bored.
Okay.
I'm admitting it.
Well, if you don't start going, we won't finish.
Okay, so we're talking about I'll redeem you, and this is the third promise that Adonai made to Moshe with the people of Israel. We also know that this ties into the Passover Seder, but the interesting thing is that redemption always has to be, always kind of deals with being set free from slavery. And without the promise of redemption for the Israelites, their taskmasters really would have still had a claim on them, and God wanted to cut all of those all of those bonds and set his people free to take them to the promised land, and also to give them the guidelines on how to worship him and how to have a proper relationship with him. So really, when he redeemed them, that slavery aspect was terminated, and really in God's view, they were never to go back again. Now we know because they turned away from following Adonai, they did go back into, being dispersed from the land and things like that. But God's perfect plan was that they would possess the land, worship him always, not fall away from him.
And that he would be their master.
Yes.
And that's really what the focus is. It's, Judy, in ancient times when slaves were bought and sold, they were literally transferred of ownership. Money was given, or something was given in exchange for that person, and then they would sever their ties with their old master and now be a part of their new. And that's really what we see here with God, is God, not only did he redeem them, but he brought them into his own. But unlike the evil Egyptian taskmasters, he was a loving, caring God who cared for his people as his children.
And we know in the Passover Seder, if you've ever been through a Seder with us, and we've taught about it several times, and we will continue because we're here to educate, is that third cup of wine is known as the cup of redemption. And that is the cup that Yeshua took and really put into fact what everybody calls communion nowadays. But he used that third cup of wine in the Passover Seder to represent the blood that he would be shedding on our behalf in his crucifixion. And really, in that way, he permanently linked himself with the promises in this book of Exodus, in Exodus chapter 6. And the concept of redemption is such an important element in the work of Messiah. And in fact, we know that he declared one of the purposes of his death was to give his life as a ransom for many, which we find in Matthew 20:28.
And continuing with that idea, Judy, is that we understand that with his ransom that was paid, we're freed. In fact, in the book of Romans, chapter 6 and even chapter 7 makes it clear that we were bound to sin, and that's what our slavery was too, is sin. And sin was our old master, but Yeshua redeemed us from it. Sin no longer has its claim on our lives. Moreover, we now have a new master, completely different from sin, as it's talked about in 1 Corinthians 6:18 through 19, which informs us that we are not our own. We were bought with a price, the blood of Yeshua. The Lord himself is our new master who bought us with the price of his blood. And
it's really interesting that there's really kind of three implications to this, three truths that we can take away. And first of all, is that our relationship to sin has been completely severed. Those chains of bondage have been broken forever. The second implication is that we are not completely free in the usual way that defines freedom. We still have a master. We are still slaves, but this new master loves us. He has more concern for us than sometimes we have for ourselves. He understands our shortcomings. He understands our limitations, and he's not going to let us be overtaken with more than we can handle. And he's gentle and he's kind. And the ironic thing is that by being enslaved to this master and in serving him, we really truly find freedom in every sense of the word. And the third implication, it kind of deals with the old master who ruled us. It's no matter how much we may rebel against him, he's not going to let us go.
Right. And then, Judy, that takes us to the next point, which is, I will take you to me. And really, up until now, all the promises in this parsha has really had something to do with the change, which would take place in Israel's relationship to slavery. The fourth promise is different, though. It has little to do with the enslavement, but everything to do with the personal, intimate relationship with the Lord that he desires to make with us. And this brings us into the betrothal of that relationship, that husband-wife connection.
Well, and the Hebrew word that's used there means to take. And there's another time when this is used in reference to taking a wife, and that was found in the example in Genesis 24, where Abraham instructs his servant to find a wife for Isaac. So based on this usage, it seems that the Lord is telling Israel that he wanted to take them to himself. And it was really as if he was proposing marriage. And at this point, in Israel's moment of betrothal, there was a formal engagement to her husband, to Hashem. And really, we see that, when you talk about this marriage relationship, marriage is between two people. It's between, and in this case, it's between Israel and Adonai, between Hashem. The Tanakh makes it extremely clear that Israel is the bride of Adonai.
And that's a key point, Judy, because this really brings us really almost to a dilemma, because the relationship between God and his people is that of husband and wife. He has chosen them. And some will say that, and it's clear from the Tanakh that Israel is God's bride. But there's many in the body that will say that because Israel was unfaithful, God has turned from Israel and has divorced Israel and taken a new bride, which is the church, which, if you look at the scripture, goes against God's will, because one thing God hates is divorce. And so we see that this is not the case. And really, this brings us into a whole issue that deals with this idea of this promise that God has made. He's guaranteed it to Israel, but then how do the Gentiles come in the picture? Some will say that he divorced one and has brought the other one in, pretty much a replacement theology. Others say he has two brides, the bride of Israel and the bride of the church. Basically two covenant theory. Both are wrong. On the contrary, what God does is he engrafts the Gentile into the Jew. So you don't become Jewish, but you become engrafted in through Abraham, and therefore one bride made up of the body of Jew and Gentile.
Oh, yeah, we see that basically through Messiah, Adonai has just increased his bride by adding to it the non-Jewish believers in Yeshua. So basically the bottom line is that this promise that the Holy One was seeking to establish a close relationship, a husband-wife relationship, with not only Israel, but with all who were grafted into Israel. And so he relates to us through Messiah in that one-on-one daily relationship. He loves for us, he cares for us as that perfect husband would. So, and we see that with our inheritance is through Messiah and becoming a part of that grafted in. And as you said, we don't become, I'm speaking as a Gentile here. I don't become a Jew.
Right.
I become a fellow heir. I become grafted in, but as a Gentile, I still have my own specific role that I'm supposed to be playing. If God expected us to become all Jews, why would there be in Romans, where it's very clear what the role of the Jew is and the role of the Gentile? There's a clear role. So we need each other to fulfill God's ultimate plan.
You're exactly right, and that's why the last promise he makes, it's I shall bring you. And this last promise is interesting because it's only a promise. It's not represented by a cup of wine during the Passover Seder, but we really can assume that as God is making that promise to Israel, that he will lead them to the promised land. And just as you said, Judy, it wasn't just Jews who went there, it was those righteous Gentiles. God will lead those who he has chosen to follow him. We as believers in Messiah, both Jew and Gentile, can worship together in the way in which God has instructed us to do, not man's way, but God's way, which is through the Torah, the Haftorah, and the Brit Hadashah, all still active, all still playing an important part of it. One does not supersede the other. On the contrary, if we don't have the Torah, there's no way to have the Brit Hadashah, because that's where our Messiah is revealed. When we get back from the break, we're going to be talking to Terri Gillipsie. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Messianic Hour. I'm your host, Rabbi Scott. This show is dedicated to reaching the lost and educating the found. I want to encourage you to go to our website, rabbiscott.com. There you can get more information about the show. You can sign up for our free newsletter. With that, you'll get a free book, I Have a Friend Who's Jewish, Do You? And a prophecy card, 70 key prophecies, where they're found in the Torah, where they're fulfilled in the Brit Hadashah. It's a great way to help you witness and share your faith to your unsaved Jewish and Gentile friends. And we want to encourage you, while you're at the website, you can plant a tree in Israel to help the land, to bless the land. Remember, we are a listener-supported show, and you can give online donations right there, securely online. Also, our mail address is there as well to mail any donations in. We're glad you're with us. Remember, each week we have our weekly Shabbat service. You can also tune in to our live screening, live streaming of our services and teachings. And with us on the phone right now, we have a old-time friend, Terri Gillipsie. I always say her name wrong. Gillipsie.
Let Terri just say it.
Just say it, Terri.
Terri Gillipsie.
Gillespie.
See, she could have had an easier name.
Hey, she married the guy.
That's true.
It's like me. I married you and ended up with Seculo, so we don't have choice over that sometimes.
That is true. And we've known Terri for many, many years, and she has worked, if anyone's involved or been involved with the MJAA, the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America, anytime over the last umpteen years, you probably have talked to Terri, especially if you're working with the going to the Messiah conferences and things like that. And so it's great to have you on the show, because you now have not your first book, but your second book. Your first book was Making Eye Contact with God, and it's a woman's devotional. And you've now come up with a second book. It's your first novel, and it's She Does Good Hair. And this is book one of the Hair Maven series. So it's going to be, and it just got released in October as an ebook. Now, where can they get your first book?
The first book you can get online. You can get it through bookstores. Right now, ChristianBook.com has the cheapest price.
All right.
So, yeah.
So, and then they can also go to your website, and I'm going to spell it out slowly. We also have it on our website, and you can check it out on YouTube as well. It's TerriGillespie.com. You need to get a shorter one.
Scott, stop.
So you can join it there and check that out. But now let's go into this new book. So Judy has the first question, because she was asking you offline.
How did you get it? How did you come up with the plot set in a hair salon?
Ooh, that's a great question. What I wanted to do is I wanted to show a modern-day Ruth and Naomi story in a culture that would be really familiar to women. And a hair salon, when you find a good hair salon and you find a good hairstylist, there is a trust that happens there, and a community that is built there. So what I wanted to do is to take a community that was already established in women's minds and then put a little twist on it. And let's fill it with hairstylists that are both Jewish and Gentile, and they learn how to be one in Messiah.
Oh, that's awesome. That is really cool, and that is something. I mean, as a lady here, that is something I can totally relate to. Because when you find someone who can do your hair, oh, honey, you never want to lose them. And then you don't want to tell anybody else, because they might get overbooked, and then you can't get in when you really need them. So yeah, we women with our hairstylist are very possessive.
Well, and what's wonderful is there's an element of trust, because it's very, is we ladies know that having someone touch our hair is a very intimate and private thing. So here's a culture that is already about intimacy at a certain level. So what happens when you take it to the next level, and that is to be able to bring in our faith, to be able to bring in unity, and to be able to have an impact with that unity and our faith into the community. So, and of course, lots of fun, lots of crying, lots of drama, but ultimately it shows God's love and grace in our lives.
So I'm assuming the book is really geared more towards women, but what can men get out of the book?
That's a good question.
Always ask the tough
Sorry,
ones.
Scott.
Thanks.
Sorry,
Put it on this. You can get an understanding of how women feel about their hair.
Hair. Well, you know what it is I've had, coming from the Christian world and growing up in a church, when I became a part of the Messianic community, there was a real learning curve.
Right.
And what I really wanted to do is to provide kind of a fun place for women to be able to discover that and kind of learn that curve. And because I have such a love for seeing unity between Jew and Gentile in the Messiah, the most beautiful story of that is Ruth and Naomi, a Jewish woman and a Gentile young woman that are united and integrated into a community, and that community and that unity changed the world because Ruth was a part of the lineage of Yeshua. So it's powerful. It can be an extremely powerful thing for good or for not so good.
And the book is called She Does Good Hair, and it's an ebook. You can go to Amazon.com, just search She Does Good Hair, and it will pull that up. You can download it onto your Kindle, your Apple, all your different products, and read that right online. So give you a great understanding of this part one of this series that will be going on. So kind of give us the setting. We got about just over 2 minutes left. So give us an opening idea of what we're coming into, what are they experiencing, and then the second part of the question is how many books are you looking to do with this series?
Right now I have 3 plotted out. So book 1, 2, and 3. What the reader will encounter is the protagonist is Shira. And Shira was raised in a Messianic community, but she really never made a commitment of faith. In fact, there were some traumatic things that happened in her life, and she actually walked away from the community. So she's a hairdresser on the fast track to salon fame in New York City, but she's yanked back to her hometown when she inherits a rundown salon, her aunt's salon, and 3 beauticians that make her life a tangled mess. And it's how God can take 4 of the most unlikely women and bring them together, and how they can do good.
Well, that's exciting. So it sounds like it's going to be a great book. It's already been out. You were saying before the show started, you've gotten some great reviews on it. So again, people can go to Amazon, and the book's name is She Does Good Hair. You can check that out. It's an ebook. If you want to get a great woman's devotional, the book is Making Eye Contact with God. Again, just go search the internet, and you'll be able to get up in many different stores and check that out. Really want to encourage you to get this. It's a great opportunity, great way to see Messiah from a fictional point of view, bringing in the Messianic understanding into what we call, quote, Christian novels. So this is a really neat aspect, and we just wish you the best, Terri, on this, and look forward to seeing the next book coming out. Real quick, when do you think that one will be out?
If it comes out by ebook, I hope within 6 to 12 months.
Oh, yeah.
Great. So these will be coming out fairly quick. You can check that out. Remember, go to our website, rabbiscott.com, for more information. Remember, we are a listener-supported show. Join us next year, June 9th through the 19th in Israel. Join us on our trip as we go see the land. And until next week, this is Rabbi Scott
And Judy.
saying shalom and praying for the peace of Jerusalem.